You're listening to episode 248 of the Small and Supercharged podcast with Ria Freeman. Well, I am delighted to be joined on today's podcast by Alanna Clarke, who, I usually say who you may know from, but you may know from TikTok, Instagram, dressage, all sorts. So I'm actually going to hand over to you, Alanna. Can you tell us a bit about you?
So, hi guys, I'm Alanna Clarke. You might know me from my channels, Alanna Clarke Equestrian. I'm a 20-year-old British dressage rider. Currently also doing a law degree, and I work part-time. And I do a lot on social media, just kind of sharing my day-to-day shenanigans and trying to make people laugh about horses, because if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
Oh, isn't that the truth? And you do have also an exceptional saddle pad collection.
Yeah, I think I might have a little bit of a problem, but it's fine. It's a problem that doesn't hurt anyone but my bank account.
But then there is a very fine line between addiction problem in this way and being a collector, isn't there?
Yes, yes. Well, some people collect postal stamps, some people collect little toy cars. I happen to collect saddle pads.
Yeah, exactly. Just call yourself a collector from now on. It's much more. It works better.
Yes, I like that much better.
um, I mentioned you to someone the other day. They said, "Oh, the one with all the saddle pads." I'm like, "Yeah, that's the one."
That's how I like to be known.
Amazing. So obviously you've got loads of stuff going on, and you've been horsey for a long time. But can you just run us through your kind of stats, your numbers on social?
So my numbers on social. So on TikTok, I've got 134,000 followers. And then on Instagram, I've got 71.5 thousand. And then YouTube, I'm steadily building up to I've got just over 2,000 now, and I'm just trying to build my YouTube up a little bit more now. And I've got a few thousand on Facebook too.
I mean, I know whenever I chat to people, it's not about the numbers on their own, but just to kind of frame that, how many people you're speaking to. Because in addition to having these impressive numbers, you get really, really good engagement as well, which is what I think everybody agrees is the key part of social media.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
talk to us about how you got started on social media and why you started it and the kind of how that's evolved, really.
So really, I started sharing stuff on my accounts about what I love to do when I was about 13. Um, and then during the COVID lockdown, I started doing a few TikToks because obviously there wasn't a lot to do during the day with everyone being stuck indoors. Um, and I just started sharing, funny videos about horses and all that sort of thing. And it steadily just started sort of building. And then I started cross posting my TikToks to Instagram, and it seemed to really catch fire. Um, and I used to do a few bits with Pony Mag back in the day as well, and that's what started me on my saddle pad collection, because I did a new video every month for them, and it was quite good to be in a different color every month. So I'd go out, try and get a secondhand saddle pad off of like Facebook or eBay, and that's kind of what started the collection and kind of what started putting my name out there a little bit more. But it was TikTok and Instagram, doing the TikToks and the reels, which really started, the ball rolling with getting more followers and being seen by more people.
So when you started doing TikTok and Instagram, what was your sort of objective behind the kind of content you're going to release? Because if we look at both of the platforms, there's so much out there, but people tend to sort of go into particular sub niches, don't they? Whether they're
Mm-hmm.
educational or, well, there's loads of different things. So what was your thought when you started?
My thought when I started, I just thought it was great to see that I'm not on my own, and other equestrians have the same doubts and fears. And I like sharing not only just my highs that I go through and all the funny bits about being a horse rider and owning horses and part of this amazing community, but also the lows. And to know that when you're on your own in the middle of a field and you can't catch your horse and it's wet and it's muddy and it's miserable, other people have been there too, and you're not just stood there lonely. There's a whole community behind you that gets what you're going through, gets what you're feeling. um And that was kind of my objective with my accounts. People seemed to just enjoy my content and really be able to relate. And I really liked that and being able to have that sort of relationship with everyone that kind of sees my accounts.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. And I think that it is important to be relatable because, well, there's so many reasons for that being important for the creator, because otherwise you're pretending that life is perfect all the time and it never
Yeah.
is. But also for the people consuming that content, it can be quite
Yes,
damaging.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't thank everyone enough for following me and building this community that loves horses and can laugh together. It's honestly been so amazing to be able to get that feedback from people that you don't even know from halfway around the world, and
Yeah.
yet sat there saying, I love the stuff you put out. It's absolutely great.
It is very much a global community, isn't it? The social media has taken it to that global level.
Yes, it's taking it to that next step, that next level. People get a bit stuck in their own circle, and then suddenly, boom, it's huge.
Yeah, no, completely. And as you say, the things that happen to horse owners or to everybody, it goes across the world, even if things are slightly different, brands are slightly different, the conditions are slightly different. The situation is very, very similar.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah.
So obviously you share a lot of very relatable, not the shiny stuff, but also has your accounts have they evolved over time too?
I certainly think might not get as much of a reaction as you do now because over time with social media, algorithms change
Yeah,
and stuff that might have been recognized back then and then TikTok and Instagram and Facebook would push and show to lots of people. The algorithm changes and it doesn't get shown to many people. So you have to kind of adapt with how, because you can either stay as you are, keep producing the content that you produce, which, I'm still producing some of the same content that I produced in the very beginning because that's me and I want to stay true to me. But you also have to adapt because otherwise you will get left behind.
yeah.
So I started doing because I used to do a lot of videos just in my bedroom, um, with my like studio lights, getting all dressed up, and over time I've started doing a lot more outside with the horses. That's what people like seeing now. So yeah, you've just got to change and adapt according to the weather.
No, I can absolutely understand that. And have you found that your content's changed as well? Because I've been seeing a lot of really funny videos that you've been producing as well, which again really relatable, but definitely show the funny side of a lot of things.
Yeah, I think they've changed slightly because obviously you can't keep producing the same jokes over and over. Um, but yeah, so I've been able to get out and do a lot more. It's like I've gone from not being able to take the horses out that much because obviously I started in lockdown to now I'm actually going out and about, being able to take the horses out and produce more content out there with them. And it means it's more funny because you can actually see it happening in front of you.
Definitely.
So I think it's changed in that way.
Oh, I mean, where do you get your inspiration from? Because I think any content creator, you have to, some things happen in front of you, as you say, which is brilliant. But you do
Hmm.
also have to put quite a lot of work in to make sure you have got that steady stream of content coming through, don't you? And you've got that audience and that you've built that following.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I get a lot of my inspiration from, so I'll spend quite a bit. I'm not sure if this sounds like work because I'll just be sat on TikTok watching TikTok. But I get a lot of my inspiration from other content creators. And obviously if I have taken a video and copied it, I will always give credit because that's just what you do. You don't just steal someone's video, you give credit. So I'm always very careful with that. But I'll take inspiration from other creators and their experiences, and also take inspiration from my own experiences with horses. So it's almost like a lot of sharing is going around. So it is really really nice. So yeah.
And on your sort of journey from kind of growing your account, what have you learnt along the way? Perhaps it's to do with creating the content or dealing with any feedback in inverted commas from people. What have you sort of learnt about that? Maybe you've learnt about yourself or dealing with the situations.
So what I've learned about myself is really that at the end of the day, you've got to stay true to yourself. So over time, working as an influencer, as I'm gaining more followers now, and getting approached by more brands, I definitely need to make sure that I am true to myself, because a lot of my audience looks up to me, and I hope respects my opinion. So when I'm telling someone that, or telling my audience, that I believe in this product or I'm promoting this product, I always make sure it's a product that I've used previously. It's a product that I have great faith in, so that when I tell someone that it is good and usable and great, they know that I'm telling the truth and they can trust in that. I have been approached by brands in the past where you could maybe purchase a similar product for much cheaper on a different site, and it was a paid promotion. I like they did want to pay me for it, but I knew that I couldn't sell that to my audience because it would just destroy that trust.
Yeah.
And so that is so incredibly important to me, and something that I've learned over time, is to basically to just never sell out, because these people and this audience, all these thousands of people, trust me, and that is incredibly important to me.
And that's the thing, isn't it? You sort of look at the opportunity to make some money in the short term, but it can damage years and years and years of work that you've already done, and also can make you much less
Yeah,
trustworthy,
yeah,
but actually from a commercial point of view, much less interesting to brands if you don't have that real belief in what you're doing.
yeah, absolutely. Because a brand isn't going to want to work with someone necessarily if they clearly just sell out for every single brand that approaches them. You do need to know and trust in what you're doing. And if a brand wants a representative, they're going to want someone that their audience will trust, will follow.
No, definitely. So thinking about your kind of whole journey, what have been some of the really amazing sort of pinch me kind of opportunities you've had that you've thought, crikey, this is something?
Well, definitely it's definitely when I started to go to shows or something, and I will have like young people or different people come up to me when I'm walking around and be like, "Oh my gosh, I love your content," or "I've always wanted to meet you," or ask for a picture. I honestly, that is such a pinch me moment, because you don't see yourself as someone, like a pseudo celebrity. You don't see yourself as an, I know I've called myself an influencer, but when you look in the mirror, you just see ordinary you. And so to have someone come up to you or have someone comment on your stuff saying you're my idol or something like that, that honestly is such a pinch me moment. It feels incredible. And I am so, so grateful and so thankful to people that they can like trust me with that, and that they feel comfortable enough to approach me with that. I absolutely love it. So if ever anyone's like walking around at a show and wants to say hi, please, please do. Because honestly, it brightens my day. It honestly makes my entire day. And that's just been such a huge thing for me to see the people coming back to me and talking to me. It's just great.
I think that's the thing as well, isn't it? On social, we look at the you look at the number of followers, and you've got a huge number of followers, but it's quite difficult to relate that to physical people. I mean, there's a really good analogy somewhere which would have been useful if I could remember. But if 50 people were stood in front of you for you to talk to, that's quite a
Hmm.
decent number. Hundreds, obviously more.
Yeah.
1,000, that's quite a big room full of people. And
Hmm.
you've got 71,000. If all those people were stood in a room, it would be stadium sized. And
Yeah.
those people do watch your content, they do enjoy what you're putting out there. So it's those people that are the ones who are coming to see you, and there's a lot of them to potentially cross paths with.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really nice when the few that do get up, because I know it can be quite intimidating. I mean, one time I was at, I think it was a London International Horse Show, and a girl come up and her mum was like, "Oh, can she take a picture with you?" And when I put my arm around her to take the picture, she was shaking. So it does take a massive
Oh,
amount of confidence to approach these people that have obviously been put on a pedestal. And it was just so lovely and nice, and it genuinely made me feel a little bit emotional, because I was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize
mm.
I was one of these people that could make someone feel that way." And I was just like, wow, like, it makes you realize how much power you have and how responsible you have to be with that power, which circulates me back to my earlier point about never betraying that trust that has been put in you as an influencer.
I was going to say that to you, when you meet these people in real life and you meet your fans and your followers, and you can see how much they do genuinely enjoy your content and respect your opinion, is it a really good sort of reminder, I guess, that what you do definitely does matter. I mean, I know it does, but because when we work in our own isolated way, we get nice comments, maybe get some negative comments, but it doesn't quite feel real all the time, does it?
Absolutely, I was just about to say the same thing. You sit there and you just like, you pop your video on and it doesn't feel real. And you're not looking these people in the eye. And then you go out into the world and these people come up to you and suddenly it just hits you.
Mm,
It's like, wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, lovely for all involved and all concerned, because you can see the real impact you're making, which must be really lovely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So thinking about your kind of whole journey to date, what
Mhm.
have there been any lows along your kind of social media influencer journey that you thought, God, this is hard, or why am I doing this? Or there must be easier things to do, because you're a busy lady as well with everything you've got going on.
Yeah, yeah. So I am quite busy. Because I've got my university degree that I'm going through at the minute. 'Cause I've got my law degree. I also work 3 days a week. I work 18 hours a week as a cashier at B&Q, and then I've also got, I look after well, three of the horses. My mum's recently just got a horse as well that she's letting me steal because he can jump better than mine.
Oh,
um, yeah, so I also help look after him. So I look after pretty much four horses as well as doing all the social media. So it is quite hectic. But what I have found, which is a low, is that actually it's not necessarily the people online, um, but people in real life. Like I have lost friends, and being accused of stealing sponsors when the sponsor approached me for a one-off content and I agreed and it didn't impact on their sponsorship at all, but I had vile messages and posts from their family and friends all over social media, and I thought of that person as a long time friend and I had supported them previously. It's really hard to see the people in real life that you thought you knew and you trusted just tearing you apart, and from jealousy. Really quite difficult in real life as well as online.
so that's really I mean, horrible, but it's also it is really interesting, because often, with people who have got these, big social media accounts, they usually say it's people that they've never met who will, be unpleasant online, or because they may perhaps don't understand, or it is just jealousy. But that's next level when it's someone that you really do know and that you saw as a friend.
Absolutely, you can't see me right now, but I'm nodding along. um, but yeah, yeah. I mean, what I found actually online is it's easier to deal with the online bullies and trolls because at the end of the day, if you don't like my content, feel free to scroll. I've made it for me to feel happy and for the people that do relate and do want to watch it for them as well. It's if you don't like it, keep it going. I mean, I'm quite happy to block people because if it's not their content, it's not their content. I know that I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And I'm kind of like, my attitude towards online trolls and that sort of thing is quite blasé. It's like, yeah, okay, blocked, bye. Whereas
Yeah.
the people in real life is a lot harder to deal with and a lot more emotionally taxing because those are people that are, is like almost normal you, not in your influencer persona. Even though I try my best to make sure that everyone online knows normal me as well, because we've all seen me running about in my absolutely filthy equidry. It is not all glitz and glam.
But I mean, how did you deal with the issue that you had, and did it make you think, sort of second guess yourself a bit moving forward with other sponsorships or associations or anything like that?
Um, it certainly made me second guess myself with that particular because it wasn't a sponsorship that they'd offered me. It was just a one-off collaboration that didn't impact on anyone else's sponsorship at all. And I wasn't getting sponsored by them because I didn't want to be, and they didn't want to sponsor me either. And that's absolutely fine. But it did make me wary of working with that particular brand because I'm like, I'm just getting tarnished with this brush now. So it's like, I don't want to put my name to that. So actually, it was a bad thing for that brand as well because I wasn't really that happy at working with them anymore because emotionally, I just didn't want to. But yeah, it did make me a bit wary. But at the end of the day, I just had to move on with my life, keep carrying on with what I was doing. And at least I found out, who my real friends were and who was really there for me. Yeah, I suppose everyone has to learn it at some point.
Still a rubbish lesson.
It's
A
a
really
lesson I could have
rubbish
done
lesson.
without.
Definitely, yeah. But I mean, has it been, when you work with brands now, do you tend to go for like longer term connections, or are you happy with the specific one-off influencer jobs? Has this impacted on that at all?
So I wouldn't say this situation's impacted on that at all because I think it was just a very bad situation with some unsavory people that, were going through a bad time themselves at the time. And it just blew up. I'd say the brands that I work with now, I mean, I do the odd ad hoc collaboration if it's a brand, that I have adored for a very long time and always wanted to work with. Um, but with me being so busy, I haven't actually been taking on any more long-term brands because I want to be able to give everything my all, and I want to be able to do a good job. I'm trying to say this with half-arse it. I don't want to do that at all. I
No,
tried to think of that without swearing, but I couldn't think of the word, sorry.
it's fine. I think a half-ass is fine. I think it's absolutely fine.
um,
And
but yeah, I always want to make sure that whoever I work with is getting value for their money. So I'm not necessarily looking for any more brands now, but the brands that I have got, I do try to make sure that there is a contract in place, just so that there is never any kind of grey areas, and that both me and the brand know what we want out of it.
I think that's a really, really good point. Whether it's a kind of official contract or a written agreement, it's so. I mean, I think the contract way is absolutely, it's the most professional way to go. But having that clarity,
Absolutely.
you're not trying to mind read. They're not trying to mind read. When I see relationships fall apart, that's where the issue comes. One person's expected one thing, one person's thought they meant something else,
Yeah.
and no one's
Yeah, I mean,
happy.
I have had that happen. So I think communication is so incredibly important on both sides. So I need to make sure that I have understood what they want and be able to deliver that. But at the same time, I've also gone back to a brand before asking for feedback, and they've turned around and said, "Well, we loved your content, but we would have preferred some more portrait shots." But had they communicated that to me before, I would quite happily given them portrait shots, but unfortunately my crystal ball was a bit murky that day. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I think communication is absolutely key to getting a really good brand influencer partnership. Just so both of you know what you're doing and there isn't any upset or anything like that. Because at the same time, the influencer is spending a lot of time, like if you think about it like this, a brand would have to pay a model, they'd have to pay a photographer, probably have to pay for someone to get the horse ready, they'd have to pay for a venue and location, they'd also have to pay for the marketing. Whereas they don't have to do that, they just have to, negotiate with the influencer and they kind of sort all of that out for them.
Mm.
And at the same time, the influencer is getting, whatever they've negotiated in return. So there is quite a bit at stake. So you want to make sure that the communication's there so that both of you come out of it quite happy.
Do you see the communication really working hand in hand with the contract, like they're two sides of the same equation?
I think so. What I found with a lot of brands is they're quite happy to kind of let me loose. So
Yeah,
they'll say, so I'll say, what kind of thing do you want? And they'll give me like a very vague overview. We'll have like a basic contract to start off with, and then they'll be like, go run free, go wild,
yeah.
which kind of suits us both because and I mean, I always say to them at the end, is there anything specific you want to see? How has this gone? Is there anything you don't want to see? And that kind of thing's gone really quite well for me so far. Touch wood.
I mean, it makes sense. And I always say when I work with brands who are looking to work with influencers, the point of when a brand works with an influencer is because they basically want access to that influencer's audience, and that influencer's
Yes.
audience likes the style that the influencer does.
Mm,
So if you go in and say, and I know of brands, not that I've ever worked with them, wouldn't, who have scripted posts, who have been so specific on what they've wanted, it just removes any creativity or any individuality for the influencers to put their own point across. And I've just looked and gone, put some money towards a Facebook ad.
yeah. It just becomes an advert then. Whereas the whole point of using an influencer is that you've got their personality shining through and they're putting their stamp of approval on it. So there needs to be some form of them coming through in that.
Completely. mean, what do you sort of think of the future of influencer marketing in the equestrian space? Do you see it sort of on the up? Do you see it's getting more professional? Do you see it's getting more amateur? How are you kind of viewing it, and what do you think it's going to evolve into?
I think it's definitely on the rise. I think a lot of brands have clocked onto now because obviously a lot of brands, as they should be, are massive supporters of the top of the sport with all of the athletes that are doing really, really well at the minute, which, absolutely as they should be. Let's reward that. But I've also noticed a lot of big brands are also swaying towards, the people with the big followers. Like we've got me, for example. I am not going to the Olympics anytime soon. I mean, hopefully one day, fingers crossed. Um, but I have certainly got brands that had a few years gone past, or if I didn't have the following I had now, um, wouldn't have looked twice at me, and that's fine. That is just how it is. Um, so I definitely think that there is a big swing towards brands recognizing influencers as well as the top riders. And I think that's going to keep increasing because at the end of the day, the influencers is what everyone is seeing. Um, and a lot of the top riders, I'm not saying all of them, because a lot of them are actually steadily getting into the influencer sphere now. A lot of the top riders don't tend to post that much.
Yeah,
And the only time they'll get seen is if they go to a competition, and
yeah.
that's just not giving the outreach that a lot of these brands are giving a lot of money to do. So I definitely think influencers is kind of being where the shift is going. I thought we'll be in trouble though if the top athletes start getting into it.
I think it is. I think for the top athlete point of view, and I've said this more than once, and definitely to you, it's such a missed opportunity for them. I think
Absolutely.
influencers bring something different to the party. If you are more of a leisure amateur, you're right, you're kind of coming up through the ranks, but it's not your full-time job. You've got a
Mhm.
very different take on the situation to a professional who's got a lot of horses that they're training day in, day out. It's a
Yeah.
whole different vibe, a different style of content. There's place
Yeah.
for the two to coexist beautifully. But the problem is the pro riders don't share that world with us. And then from a
No.
brand point of view, if I switch my brand hat on, you look and go, well, actually, this person is going to deliver all this to a greater audience, which is going to get more reach, more sales, more interest. They're the people that brands invest in. If you look at it just from a numbers point of view, how much it's
Yeah.
going to cost versus what you're going to get.
Yeah. I mean, that being said as well, I think the influencers, quite often they're not necessarily people with a lot of money. They're not necessarily people with a lot of horses or, like that have all the glitz and the glamour and everything. They're a lot more relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And when their audience sees someone that is just like them doing stuff with a certain brand, they're like, oh, that works for me as well. So I think that's also a good point to make about relationships with brands and influencers.
Definitely. I mean, one subject that is always talked about is payment. And I thought, why not talk about this with you? Because I've obviously got my views on it, with a brand hat on, but I would love to hear your views on it. Should brands be paying to work with influencers?
I think they should be. As to go back over a point I made earlier about, if you think about it in the way of the brand would have to pay for a photographer, etc. The brand would have to pay a lot of money to be able to get the same outreach um, as an influencer would. And I don't think some brands, not obviously not all brands, because I see a lot on TikTok of brands complaining about influencers wanting free stuff or wanting money. But with influencers, we are putting in a lot of time and effort and work into producing this content for people. I think it's right that we and they should get, something for it. I mean, I think certainly because I see a lot of brands. I saw one the other day. Obviously, I'm not going to mention names, but there was one, and they just posted on Facebook being like, you know, who wants to be a brand ambassador for us, and they wanted so much content, huge time commitment, huge. and the influence was getting very, very, very little back. And this is really taking advantage of, the people that are just starting out, because obviously it's easy to get starry eyed going, oh my gosh, these brands want to work with me. And they'll take on so much and they're getting so very little for what they're taking on. It's actually really unfair, and a little bit exploitive, I think, personally. I wonder, what do you think with your brand hat on to that?
I think I think you're right, but I also think it depends. So
Hmm.
if I'm saying to you with your following, here's a hoof pick. I want you to create 16 reels and a load of stills and put it on your grid. Then yes, of course, yeah, absolutely, that brand should be paying, because the hoof pick's probably worth. Let's say it's a really good hoof pick. Let's go £5. That is
Okay.
nowhere near okay to be giving you that product in exchange for the work.
Yeah, yeah.
If though I'm giving you I think something expensive saddle. If I'm giving you a
Okay.
saddle, then I, as a brand, that's obviously got a value to it. I wouldn't expect 16 reels a week, but I think it's fair to ask for content in exchange for that product, because the product's got the monetary value. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I've got it. So I do take some goods, or factor the worth of goods into
Yes.
my rates. And especially with something so huge as a saddle, I would definitely take that on board and certainly be open to negotiations.
Yeah.
However, if you're wanting loads of content, like you said, let's say do something ridiculous like 16 reels a week.
Yeah, for a hoof
You've
pick.
got you've got to also think about all the different ideas this creator's got to come up with then, because they can't make 16 of the same reel in
No.
1 week, because that will absolutely bore their audience to tears. And by
Yeah.
the end of the week, they won't have any followers.
Yeah.
So you've also got to think of all the ideas that have got to go into it. And if those ideas are out there and outlandish, then they've also got to hire people to help them execute those ideas and execute those plans. And it becomes, at some points, it can become more expensive to create that content than like the monetary value of whatever you've been given, whether it's a saddle or whether it's a t-shirt or
Yeah.
saddle pad, all that sort of thing. So it is really interesting to see both sides of the story and see the different opinions on it.
Yeah, and I think there's loads of different factors as well. I think, the size of that person's following is
Hmm.
obviously an impact, has an impact. It just does. The quality of the work they put out. If they're just doing a quick photograph, they take themselves in the field, that's
Yeah,
one thing. If they have got hair, makeup, photographer, and
yeah,
there's so many variables.
yeah,
Um, and I was speaking to someone a few weeks ago who was looking to work with somebody, and they said, well, how much should I be paying them? And I said, well, what are they going to do for you? Well, I'm going to
yeah.
give them the product. And I said, okay, great. What are they going to do for you with the product? Um, well, they're going to tell their friends that they like it. I said, okay, on social media. No, no.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I was kind of going, well, even if this is an amazing person, I don't know who it was, um, you've still got to look at the actual value as a brand you're getting from that.
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
was
absolutely.
the thing that's annoying, I think, with the influencer space is there's not a you can't just say, right, that person's got 50,000 followers, therefore their rate is £100, 200, £500 whenever they do a post.
Hmm.
Because if they've been given a product worth 10 grand, let's go bigger now, we're going on to like small lorries. No, God, a small lorry wouldn't be 10 grand. I can't think. Let's say a trailer. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. I was doing maths and got overexcited. Doesn't take much.
I
They're
would
just
be overexcited by maths. I'm not going to lie to you.
no. I know where I'm going. Um, it's difficult because if they've been given a product worth, let's go smaller. Let's go 5 grand.
Hmm.
Then actually, how does that work with what their rate would be? And do they really want that product? Again, if I'm giving you a saddle and you think, I've actually got a room full of saddles, I don't need more saddles, that's not
Yeah,
that interesting to you. It's not something that you'd have to go out and buy. So there's so many variables in the discussion. And then how much content, what type of content does the brand want to use it as well, or do they just want to share it? As in share it from your account. I think there's so many
yeah.
variables, but I do think that as we move hopefully into a space where influencers are seen as the professionals that some of them aren't. I'm sure you'd agree with that as well. With
Oh yeah, definitely. I
um
mean, I have spoken to a brand before, and they've turned around to me and said, "Yeah, we're looking for less riders now and more influencers." And I was like, "Oh, okay," because I'm sat there thinking, I can ride, I do promise.
no, you absolutely you can. You're on one of the BD squads, aren't you?
Yeah, I did attend the National Academy. I think it was 2 years ago now.
Mm.
And I'm just training my mare now. And hopefully we can get back on it. Because I didn't apply because I want her to be, at her peak fitness and at her peak level of working before I take back on it. Because then we can get our absolute best value out of the training, because it's an absolutely amazing experience. It was really, really good.
You were up at the British Show Jumping National Training Centre, weren't you?
Yes, yes, I was.
That place is just next level, isn't it?
It's amazing. I was like, wow. I didn't take a horse with me that time, but I was so jealous of the people that got to take a horse next time.
Such a facility. Um, but yeah, I don't think brands should be shying away from paying influencers at all. I think they need to look at the value they're getting and work
Mhm.
with them, but not always go in with the no. Because it did you know when this all started off, when influencers started, it did used to be that you did get some product in exchange for a thing, but now it's become a lot more professional and it's actually a really integral part of a lot of people's marketing plans. It's still very cost effective if you, as you say, manage that contract, have that communication, understand what you're getting. It can
Yeah.
be incredibly cost effective and really drive the sales, which is the whole point of when brands work with influencers or advertise or do anything else.
Yeah. I think what we've also got to remember as well is that with a lot of influencers, especially the bigger ones, their wage is what they get paid for what they promote.
Mhm.
So, as great as a saddle is, I'm just using this theoretically, unfortunately, that isn't going to put dinner on the table
True.
at the end of the day. So with the people where influencing is actually their job, I do think it is important to factor that into account. And I did want to say, as well, I think it's important that brands, because I know you said earlier, what if they don't need a saddle, or what if they don't want this specific product that
Mm.
they're being offered. I think it's important for a brand to not just look at the number of followers, but also to look at the person themselves and look at their audience and look at what they promote and what their aesthetic is on their account, and decide whether their product would actually be suited to that particular influencer. For example, as much as I'd love to be supported by Asda, my influencers aren't going to be bothered about an Asda ad.
No, no, completely.
No,
It's just not relevant to them or why they follow you.
absolutely, absolutely. And or like, for example, I know a lot of there are a lot of mummy influencers out there, like mum and dad ones.
Yeah.
Um, if I was to promote products that were aimed at, like babies, or raising children, my followers would be very confused, and it
Yeah.
wouldn't get the same outreach if someone who did do that sort of content, um and that product was to go to them instead, because their followers would be much more interested in that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. I think brands need to the number is just a small part of the jigsaw puzzle. You
Absolutely.
don't necessarily want to be working with somebody who's got one follower because
Mhm.
you've got to look at the value that's going to give to your brand. But equally, it's not just the number, it's also what that number is made up of. And the great thing is because social is so open, it doesn't actually take a lot of time, energy, or Poirot skills to be able to look at the content that works, the engagement on the content that works, what people are talking about and what they like on each
Yeah.
individual's account.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
And
not
also as well, with an influencer, what we are able to do is not necessarily an immediate payday. What I like to think of us doing is more raising brand awareness. So
Mhm.
especially to keep using the saddle analogy, um, because is quite often a pricey product to buy. It's not necessarily something that their followers would go straight away that day and buy it right then. But if at some point they needed a saddle, it's in the back of their head that, oh, I've seen that she uses that. And so it's something that might necessarily pay out later, or something that they can save up for. So it's all about raising brand awareness for me with influencing.
I think as well, to use the high value product analogy as well, when you work with a brand for a longer period of time, it allows you to kind of add layers to that, doesn't it? So rather than saying, oh, look, I've got a shiny new saddle, you have more opportunity to talk about different aspects of it. And as you say, raise that brand awareness, increase the customer's touch points so they learn about it. So when they do need a saddle, it's at the front of their mind.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, actually, I've got a very relatable story about this. Um, I've just started working with the Albion saddles, and like, to go along with exactly what you've just said, not only are we looking at, the new saddle, which is amazing. I'm actually crying because it was stunning. But we've also done a factory tour. So I've gone around and I've learned how it's all made and all the different facts and everything behind Albion as a brand and behind what they're doing to create the absolute best saddle for your horse to be able to perform at its best possible pace. And I've made sure to record lots of that, and I'm going to be providing loads of information about that. So I think it's really important, like you've just said, to be able to not only show the product but also why it's so good.
Yeah, I mean, Albion is an incredible brand. I've had the pleasure of going around their factory myself a few years ago, and
Yeah,
the fact it's all made on site, the tree room, the leather,
yeah,
the
yeah.
special oh god, I can't remember what it's called now, but the thing that projects the shapes onto the leather to be cut
Yes, that
out,
was so cool.
the hand
But I've
finishing, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I've had Albions for years. I mean, I remember riding in my mum's Albion when she was teaching me how to ride when I was like 9. It's something that we've always used, and so to be able to work with them, and this is another example of me only using brands that I know and trust, is absolutely incredible. That's another pinch me moment, like you asked earlier.
Yeah, no, Albion is awesome, but I think it's a really good example of showing what goes on, because as consumers, we don't necessarily think about what goes into the product. You think about supermarket product. You go and you buy some, oh, pasta. I don't know. We'll go pasta. We know that flour and eggs make pasta. I'm pretty sure that's the case. But then you can actually go into where those eggs come from, and if they're happy chickens or those poor souls that are in cages. And there's actually so much to the products that we consume and we buy, whatever space we're in. And equestrian is no different, but we look at the things on the shelf and we don't necessarily think about the design or the people that is supporting, in terms of, I know with Albion, it's in the UK, in Walsall, people who've been there for years and years and years. And God, the skill of these people is insane. It's
It's
incredible.
amazing.
And we don't think of that when we look at a nice shiny saddle. We think that's a nice saddle and it's comfortable, but there's so much more to it.
So much more going on behind the scenes, definitely.
I think when you engage with the right brands as an influencer, you want to learn about that as well, because you want to be able to tell your fans and followers that not only is the product amazing, but actually it's more than meets the eye.
Yes, absolutely. And you'd be able to show that work and that craftsmanship that's gone into it too.
Definitely. Now, we were chatting about sort of lows along the journey, and we've kind of just touched on highs, obviously with Albion being one of them. But are there any more sort of real highs along the journey that you've thought, God, this is insane, this is incredible?
So like, not only the people that, I've been able to meet, that I mean, that's been absolutely incredible. And like I said before, I am so incredibly grateful and so lucky to have so many people, in my corner supporting me. It's amazing. But I've also been able to experience a lot more and be able to get a lot more opportunities that I wouldn't necessarily have, because I mean, I've been raised by a single mum in quite a deprived area. And my dad, bless him, he's absolutely lovely, but he does not support or like horses at all. So I definitely think being able to do influencing has given me a lot more opportunities that I wouldn't necessarily have. For example, I've just been invited to Bolesworth Influencer Day, and I was able to meet, Megan Elphick and Georgia from Little Pet Channel and loads of other people. And I got to have a free jumping clinic with Jeff Billington.
That's
And
not
that's
bad,
something
is it?
I would have never been able to do before. A, because I don't jump, but B, because it's Jeff Billington. Like, that was great. That was so good. Um, and it's just been like I said, the opportunities that I've been so lucky to have, it's just been wonderful for me as a rider and as a person.
No, that's really cool. I'm thinking about there's lots of people that want to get into influencering. Not sure which one to say. Um, or people who are already influencers who have got growing accounts, people who are maybe being approached by brands. So, as a big sort of subject, what tips would you give people? Let's start people just starting out who want to become influencers. Are there any tips along the journey that have been useful for you?
Yeah, definitely. So the very first thing I would say is make sure to be true to yourself, because if you start putting out stuff pretending to be someone else, you will end up getting found out. Not in a bad way, but you just won't be able to keep up that persona. So it's important that the followers and any sort of following that you gain like you for you as a person. Because if you start promoting stuff that you necessarily wouldn't like, it's just not going to work out in the end, because like it will fall apart. Another thing I would say is when you start out, it's very easy to be like, "Wow, so many people want to work with me," but you've got to remember. I think we touched on this earlier. Is to not sell out necessarily. Um, for example, I had an underwear brand approach me,
Nice.
asking if I know, asking if I could promote them. It wasn't anything to do with the company. I think it was just their PR manager, their PR person. And unfortunately, I was 14 at the time.
Oh,
And I was like, unfortunately, I'm not comfortable promoting them because I don't want people thinking about my underwear. And they're like, "Oh no, it's fine. You can just you don't have to post pictures." And I'm like, I'm good." So
how
it's definitely
random.
important to make sure that you don't sell out. You make sure that you, as I've made sure to say so many times, to go with brands that you know and you trust and you love and that you are happy to promote. Um, and just to go back to my first thing, to just be true to yourself, because at the end of the day, if people are going to follow you, they will follow you for you and like you for you. And I think that's the best thing you can do, is just put out content that makes you happy. And also remember that you are not going to be everyone's cup of tea. What you do
No,
need to be is your own cup of tea. And
no,
that's something that I always say and I always remember.
that's really good. And to people who are perhaps who have started to grow an account, they're getting quite a bit of traction, they're getting lots of approaches from people. Is there any different advice or more specific or relevant to them in their situation advice if they're starting to get these approaches?
What I would say is make sure to get as specific a brief as possible. Because if you get like kind of vague, notions, you might not necessarily do what they want you to do. And then, like, if there's no, it goes back to that communication. But again, if there's no specifics, then you might miss the mark and you might end up missing out on any more opportunities with that specific brand, which
Yeah,
won't be your fault if you haven't been told what to do. Then that's, you can't do much more than that. Like I said earlier, crystal ball isn't that great at working.
no,
Um,
definitely.
but yeah, try and get as specific a brief as possible, just so you know that you're doing what they want and you can do a good job. But also to make sure that you know your worth. Don't over promise stuff. Don't over commit, because you want to be able to do you want to be able to give it your all. And if you start promising yourself to do loads and loads and loads and extra work all the time, you're not going to be able to deliver. So you need to know what you can do, and you need to know what you're able to, what you're worth. To say that
No,
again.
that's really
Um,
important.
yeah, yeah. Just to make sure that you're not taken advantage of, because a lot of people that are just starting out, again with the people that are just starting out or the people that have just started getting approached by brands, it is easy to be like, wow, yes, I want to work with you. But you've also got to remember that you are doing a lot and you do deserve some feed. You do deserve some give back from that.
No, that makes perfect sense. Is there anything else you would like to add or share before I ask you all the places where people can follow you online?
Oh, do you know? It will probably come to me later when I'm in the shower or something.
That's all right.
But at the minute, my mind is completely blank. I think I would just be repeating myself, to be honest, because it's just going over, making sure you work with brands you trust, making sure you don't overpromise, because you do want to give your all to whoever you work with. You don't want to just half-ass a job. You want to make sure that you do a good job, and to make sure that you are always happy. And if you do get any online trolls, just remember there is that block button. at the end of the day, you are not going to please everybody. And I think a lot of people, and a lot of because I know a lot of younger people are getting into influencing now as well. Um, it's easy to sit there and read the bad comments and people being very, very mean.
Yeah.
But you don't have to. I mean, what I had when I was young and starting out was my mum always had access to all of my social media accounts, and I've been very lucky. She's not only my photographer, but she also still helps me manage my workload now. She's absolutely amazing. She's my
She's a
complete
diamond.
hero. Yeah, I adore the woman. Um, but what I've always had is when I was very young and starting out, she was always on all of my accounts. And when I did have nasty, vile messages, she got rid of them before I even looked. So what I would say to any mums that might be listening to this that have their kids that really, want to get into it is to just make sure that you're there for them and that you protect them. And now that I'm a bit older, obviously I've got a lot more control over that now, which is where my little trigger finger comes in with the block button. So
But I do think
yeah,
that's a really good
definitely that.
point, because people can be on social media legally from 13. I
Hmm.
appreciate people go on younger, but that's not we're not here to talk about that. And I think it
That's
is
a whole
really
different barrel
it's,
of
it's a
worms.
whole different problem. And obviously I've got 7-year-olds, children, not horses. My horses are older. And I hear some of the school mums sometimes go, "Oh, social media, it's awful. I'm going to spend as much time as I can keeping my kids off it." And I just go, no. Obviously,
Mm,
7 is far, far too young, and I don't, my kids don't go anywhere near it. We
yeah.
sometimes watch some cooking TikToks, but that's my account. But if parents, I think social media has got so many amazing opportunities for people, and it genuinely makes me a little bit sad when people who perhaps don't understand it, their attitude is, right, I'm not going to let my kids on it. I wouldn't say let them on young, but I would say accept it's going to happen. Upskill yourself,
Yeah.
understand and get involved with your children when they are using their social, have access to their accounts.
Yeah.
Because it is important. Weird stuff happens on social media. I don't live in a rose-tinted land, but as an adult, as a parent, it's just a weird thing, or you can head it off before it starts, or if it needs to be reported to the police or something, you can do that. It's your job as a
Absolutely.
parent, I think, to get involved with that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I was a kid that was on social media quite young, so I had Facebook when I was 8. But to be fair, my mum was logged into it the entire time. Um, I never managed that account on my own. It was just so I was able to it was really so I could contact my dad. Um,
Fair
but,
enough.
yeah, so I was on social media from quite a young age. But I think these days, at the end of the day, everything seems to be moving towards this very technological, digital, social media, kind of world. And I think if we don't keep moving with the times, letting our kids, experience it. And at the end of the day as well, if your kid wants to get on it and they're at an age where they do know how to work a phone and they'll figure it out,
Mhm.
they will end up on it with or without your permission. At least if you are there and you are there to help them and you are there to be able to protect them when they are on social media, even if it's just to hold their hand and say, look, this has happened, I'm going to do this. Um, then you have got so much more control than just trying to ban it completely because it's not going to work.
No,
That's how the
no.
rebels are born.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think the fact that your mum was so involved and is still so involved is really great, because even now you're older, having somebody that understands the journey you're on, understands the input you have from different people, it's really great to have those people on your side, isn't it? Because not everything is
Yeah.
rainbows and sunshine.
It's not. I mean, the social media world is amazing and the people you meet online are incredible. And this community, especially in the equestrian industry, is absolutely lovely and so good for making sure that you do not feel alone and that you realize that there are other people experiencing what you're experiencing. But like you said, there are bad people out there and there are people that just want to go on there and tear other people apart. And
Mhm.
that's where you need that support.
Yeah, completely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's been amazing talking to you, as always. Can you tell us all the places that we can find you on all the different platforms?
Yeah, sure. So I am on TikTok under Alanna Clarke Equestrian. I'm also under the same handle, so Alanna Clarke Equestrian on Instagram and Facebook as well, and also on YouTube. And then you could also find my inactive Twitter under Ace_Equestrian.
Oh, Ace, I like that.
So
That's clever.
I know I kind of wish I kept it as Ace because I could have been called Ace.
That's cool. But
That would have been my fun little like nickname. But
all
never
of them are
mind.
brilliant places. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been brilliant to chat to you. I've loved every minute.
Thank you so much for having me, and hopefully I've been helpful in telling you guys a little bit about relationships between influencers and brands and how to help with your following.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.